Bulletcast for life.
Welcome everybody to another edition of Under the Radar. My name is Brandon Tanguma, and on today's episode we got 3 different shows to recap today. 3 different shows from 3 different promotions, 3 different days. So much wrestling happened over the past week. Some good, a lot of it bad, be honest, and some of it somewhere in the middle. 3 different shows. One was good, one was not so good, one was in the middle. I think you can figure out what we're talking about here. We got NXT TV post Takeover. We have WWE Super Showdown and New Japan's Dominion card. And let's jump in with that New Japan Dominion card. And we're just going to kind of jump all the way to the main event and work our way back down, because that's kind of how New Japan works. It kind of gradually builds from the least important match, even though the opening match on this show was quite important and newsworthy, and we're going to talk about that as well. But we have the IWGP Heavyweight Championship match with the champion Kazuchika Okada defending against Chris Jericho, and the story going into this match is Chris Jericho is the Painmaker, and he's going in to face the Rainmaker, Okada. And Jericho, a different I would say character in New Japan, much more crazy and more straightforward heelish, maybe because he's over there in Japan, different country, different language barrier. He has to be kind of more over the top with his heel tendencies, and I don't exactly know what's the reasoning for his. I think it's Clockwork Orange. I think that's kind of the inspiration that he goes after. He used to wear a top hat. Now he wears not like a fedora, but I don't even know like what you would call it. It's almost kind of like a Sherlock Holmes kind of black hat that he wears. He wears face paint on his eyes and makeup. And Okada, Jericho has been wrestling a lot of brawling, especially in New Japan with his Omega match, Naito. And Okada said that this is for the IWGP Championship. He wants to out-wrestle Chris Jericho. And in the beginning, Jericho definitely implemented his brawling style. He goes to the outside, hits a DDT on the table. He sets up a table, doesn't actually use it, and we go into the ring. And for the most part, yes, Jericho was brawling, and he used the Walls of Jericho a lot. And I thought the announcers maybe didn't hurt the move, but they definitely kind of put over the fact that the Boston Crab or the Walls of Jericho is kind of a Young Lions move, and it's something that kind of a basic move that they were saying. And I did think that kind of took away from the effectiveness of that move, because they were kind of saying, oh, this is a Young Lions move. It's so embarrassing for Okada if he would have to tap out to this, but it's Chris Jericho. That's his main move that he's been using for like almost the past 20 years, and you're just kind of saying, the schmuck 20-year-old with who's wearing, black trunks and everything can do that move. But anyways, we go further on into the match, and Jericho is basically, he's working over Okada for a long period of time here. Okada does get his spots in, and he actually wins with a roll, not I guess like a cradle or a whatever sandwich style pin, and he wins in about 25 minutes. I thought this was a good match. I think with Okada, it's definitely a different match than all the different Okada matches he's had. I mean, going to the last 2 Dominion shows that he's wrestled Kenny Omega at, all-time classics, the 60-minute draw, the 2 out of 3 falls match where Omega finally captured the championship. Those are 2 completely different matches, much better matches than this one, I would say. But I thought, for the expectations, I wouldn't say I had terribly high expectations. I think they met them, maybe, I don't know if I'd say exceeded them. They definitely were around my expectations, about the 4-star range, in about that area. And I thought this was maybe the second best match of the show. We're going to go down the card, and we're going to talk more about what I thought was the best match of the show. But going on after the fact, a lot of news happened in the post-match angle. Maybe more newsworthy is what happened in the post-match. And after the fact, Jericho attacked, because it was kind of a roll-up, kind of surprise victory, so Jericho was fresh, and he went to go attack Okada. Attacked him. He after the bell, Jericho shoved Red Shoes, the referee. He gets Okada onto the floor, and Hiroshi Tanahashi was on commentary at the time. They showed him earlier on in the show, and he was doing commentary, and Jericho was going to hit a power bomb on that table that he set up earlier in the match. And you can kind of see Tanahashi just kind of in the background, and and then just kind of out of nowhere, he just kind of jumps up and saves Okada from the further getting beaten down by Chris Jericho. And this is kind of a big deal. It's a furthering of a storyline between Okada and Tanahashi. They were bitter rivals for a long, long time. This past year, Okada is kind of like firmly cemented that he is the, kind of the ace of New Japan to take Hiroshi Tanahashi's nickname. He's definitely kind of the top dog in the company now, and Tanahashi is aging out, and he's still a big deal. He's a big name. He still can have great matches, but he's definitely kind of taken a back seat to Okada, and now I think Tanahashi has kind of come to grips with that, and now he's more willing to help out Okada, and now they're kind of mending the fences. They have I think this was kind of like the final, not the final chapter, but like the them kind of closing the book on their rivalry, and Tanahashi definitely being an aid and someone to help out Okada, and he saved him from the beatdown. Jericho gets on the mic. He says, let's see if I can get like the exact same thing. He said he wanted a mic. He asked Tanahashi if he wants to mess with him after that he doesn't want to mess with him after what he just did to Okada. He said that he's the greatest of all time, even in this bullshit country of Japan. He said that he can have your championship, bitch. Talking about Okada, obviously. So Jericho walks up the ramp, and if you've seen Okada's ring entries before, he always has the paper dollar bills that fly in the air. And Jericho took one of them, and he took it, shoved it down his pants. Not only just put it in his pants, but he rubbed his crotch with it, and then he threw it and put it in the camera's face. And then he took another one, and posts up on his head or something. So it's continuing to downgrade Okada. So this sets up, obviously, I think 2 matches. I think you could, down the line, go back to another Okada-Jericho match. And then also this is setting up, I think, a Tanahashi match. I think this is smart. Jericho is, super smart in the business. He's always creating, making ways to create, just keep the ball moving. And he is always changing up his character. And just after he loses to Okada, he's already into another feud with Hiroshi Tanahashi. And he makes you want to see that match. And I don't know exactly when that would happen, if we see the Tanahashi match first or we see the Okada rematch first. But I definitely am not going to be shocked to see Jericho wrestle. Maybe he wrestles at the G1 final. Maybe he wrestles in Dallas. Maybe he wrestles in whatever the next big New Japan show is in the fall. But good match, solid way to end the show. Definitely kind of a, not anticlimactic, but a different way to end the show than normal, because usually at the end of New Japan shows, no matter if it's a heel or babyface, they come on, they talk to the crowd, they cut a promo, confetti flies in the air, and it's kind of like a nice, crisp way to send the crowd home and just put a nice bow on it, to say. But this time Okada and Tanahashi kind of walked to the back. No in-ring promo, no celebration, not even a pose down. And the crowd did not like this. The crowd was waiting for something to happen. Maybe they were waiting for them to run back out. That never happened. Just the show ended. The lights went up and the crowd booed, and that was how the show ended. Now, going back down the card, going backwards, the semifinal match was the IWGP Intercontinental Championship match, with the champion Kota Ibushi defending against Tetsuya Naito, and Naito wins in 22 minutes to become the new IWGP Intercontinental Champion. So this match, it was a good match, but the thing that just took me out of it, and I think if you've seen things on this show, I think you've seen the GIF before. Naito goes for a German suplex on Ibushi on the outside on the ring apron, and he tosses him straight on his head. I don't know where the exact landing was. I assume he was supposed to land on the apron, and instead of landing kind of his back on the apron, he glancing blow on the head on the metal ring apron, on the very edge of it, and then he falls to the ground, and it just looked disgusting, and it just really took me out of this match, and it was hard for me to get back into it after this, because after that, Ibushi, whether selling or not, looked like he had a concussion, looked like he was dazed and out of it. And maybe we're going to get into this for the Super Showdown show. Maybe not the best of moves after what happened in that Goldberg-Undertaker match. But this is kind of an MO with these guys. Naito and Ibushi are always just trying to find new ways to kill each other. And literally, not trying to joke here, but literally Ibushi could have died from that spot if he, hit his head even harder on that metal ring apron, edge of the ring apron. And it was a good hard hitting, fast paced match. I much preferred the match they had in Madison Square Garden WrestleMania weekend. Yes, that match was dangerous as well, but it just wasn't. They didn't have like that one bump, like that Ibushi bump on the outside, where it just completely took me out of the moment. And there was also some sloppy. There was a kind of a sloppy. Not a finish to the match, but like a setup to the finish of the match where they Ibushi had Naito up on his shoulders and he was gonna do something. I mean, almost kind of like maybe gonna hit a one wing angel. I don't exactly know what he was gonna go for, but they kind of stammered and they kind of fell into the ropes. They recovered and went into the finishing sequence where Naito ended up winning, hitting a lot of his big moves. He okay. So the very like last whatever he hits a poison Rana, reverse Rana. He hits Gloria. Then he hits whatever. So we do all that. Ibushi kicks out of more bumps on the top of his head, and then he hits Ibushi with his Destino, and boom, shakalaka. There you go. And yeah, good match, but just a dangerous, unnecessarily dangerous match. And I don't know what this means for Ibushi. I mean, he just won it at that MSG show a few months ago, and now he loses it. I think Naito definitely is the front runner to win the G1 Climax. Everyone's saying that he's declared that he wants to be a double champion, and this is kind of the first step for him to be that. I don't see him losing it and then regaining it, or just maybe losing it and then winning the G1 Climax so I think if Naito is going to do this double champion thing, if he says he's going to do this and he's going to wrestle at Wrestle Kingdom against Okada or whoever might the heavyweight champion would be. I think Naito's going to hold that championship. That's what he says. Whether he wins or not, who exactly knows? But I think Naito is definitely set up for the G1 Climax to go on a nice long run. Maybe Ibushi gets his win back in the G1 if Ibushi's even in there. If he's clear to wrestle, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's like a character or a country thing where the Japanese are kind of maybe not behind the times, but they're more like the warrior aspect and fighting through dire straits, and maybe the concussion thing isn't as big of a deal over there as over in Japan as it is in the United States. But I mean, seeing a bump like that, it was just nasty, and I never want to see anything like that again. And it's kind of an MO with Ibushi that he just always takes these nasty bumps, and for the most part, they're big and they look devastating, but you can kind of see that he's under control and he landed correctly. And we're gonna go and talk about the junior match in a second. They had a big spot there that looks very dangerous, but I think they were under control and all that other stuff. And with Ibushi losing, maybe he's gonna go to the G1, and this just kind of continues with Ibushi's fluctuating relationship, or his maybe love-hate relationship with New Japan, where they say he's gonna be a big star, he's gonna get that big push. He gets a little bit of it, but then they just take it away from him. He gets, he goes up and down. And Ibushi, as much as we love him and as much as he's a good wrestler, as they said in the commentary in the beginning, they say that people in the back, whether this is real or not, they said that people classify him as a flake just because when things get hard for Ibushi, he just runs away. There's all these different times where he just kind of disappears, and he's an enigma, as they would say. Does this mean Ibushi? I mean, he just signed a contract with New Japan, so I don't think this means he's going to jump ship and join his boy Kenny at AEW. I think Koda's going to want to stay in Japan. And does this mean he's going to go on a temper tantrum and leave the company? I don't think so, but just something where I feel like they need to push Ibushi. Ibushi is so talented. Yes, he does stupid things like this match, but he's such a great wrestler. Maybe they just don't have the faith or the trust in him to put that investment in him, but I think they need to, because he is that great of a talent. Speaking of great talent, Will Osprey absolutely on a tear this week. I said this on the Bulletcast last week that he's making a claim that he is the best in-ring wrestler in the world. Maybe just overall best wrestler in the world. And Will Osprey wins to become the new IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion as he defeats Dragon Lee in about 20 minutes. And I thought this was I think by far. I thought clearly this was the best match of the show. Just as I said, Will Ospreay on an absolute tear. They hit some just fantastic moves, great sequences, back and forth reversals into reversals. And as I said, they set up a Dragon Lee set up Will Ospreay on the guardrail, but the Japanese announce team was right behind him, right behind them, and Dragon Lee takes a running start, and mind you, it's on the guardrail, so it's quite a few distance away, maybe 5 feet, maybe even 6 feet, and he takes a running start, hits a suicide dive, just going a million miles an hour, and just drills Will Ospreay, takes out like I think one of the lead announcers or something. Crowd got a pop out of that, and it was just an absolutely insane bump. It looks dangerous, but I think they were able to do it well. The only thing is, I hope that wrestlers around the world that are wrestling in rickety old gyms around the world, that they shouldn't try to recreate that bump, because they're not in New Japan. They're not as talented as Dragon Lee and Will Ospreay are, but they see it on TV and they're going to want to try it because they want to get the "This is awesome" chant for $5 and a hot dog. But absolutely great match. The other kind of big spot in this match was Dragon Lee had Will Ospreay up on the top turnbuckle. He goes to hit a Hurricane Rana from the top turnbuckle down onto the floor, and Will Ospreay is able to land on his feet, very reminiscent of the Wrestle Kingdom match he had with Ibushi earlier this year, where Ibushi tried to do the suplex from outside the ring to inside the ring, but Ospreay flips and lands on his feet, and so Dragon Lee's not celebrating, but he's just kind of like, yeah, I hit this big move, but the crowd's cheering, but once again, he thinks the crowd's cheering for him, but they're actually cheering for Ospreay. He turns around, Ospreay's staring at him. Once again, they go back and forth, and Ospreay hits his kind of new combo finisher where he hits the top rope jumping Os Cutter in the corner, and then he hits a Stormbreaker for the win. Absolutely insane match. Definitely go out of your way to see. I would definitely recommend you watch this match. If you're not going to watch any other match this week, I think the Shingo Takagi match, with Ospreay for the Best of the Super Juniors final, I think that was a better match, but I think it definitely builds, it's kind of a nice story that he wins the tournament, and then he goes on to face the champion, and he wins that, and it's a good logical story, because he came out in the Best of Super Juniors final. He was going to be the Dragon Slayer, because Shingo didn't lose a match up to that point. He beats that dragon, and he literally has to go onto another dragon in Dragon Lee, and he beats him. And Ospreay, after the match, he ends up calling out Robbie Eagles for the Australia show. A little bit of a disappointment. I was hoping that he was going to announce that his intentions to enter the G1 Climax, especially after some of the other announcements that we saw on the G1 on this show. And speaking of one of those announcements, we have Kenta making his debut for New Japan. Katsuyori Shibata's music played, and we thought maybe he was going to come out and introduce Dragon Lee, or maybe he was going to introduce Hiromu Takahashi coming back from injury. Of course, Shibata had that gruesome brain injury, I believe, where he had a headbutt on Okada, and he has never wrestled since then. I mean, Shibata came out. I was like, he's not going to come back and wrestle, but he's done these kind of sporadic appearances before. Obviously, the first one when he came out not right after, but after his injury, kind of his first major appearance, and he points to the ring, or he points to the entranceway. And kind of a long pause, kind of awkward. But in the end, Kenta shows up. And a really big deal. Kenta never wrestled in New Japan before. And this is kind of a big deal, as the translating announcer says that, in Japan, it's a very loyal country. And you never really see big jumps like this, as Kenta made his name in Noah. And now going over to New Japan. And he declared that he wants in on the G1 Climax. And oh my goodness, I mean, we saw Kenta, or Hideo Itami if you're not aware of his WWE name. He was fantastic before he went to WWE. He had fantastic matches in ROH with Nigel McGuinness and I think Bryan Danielson and a whole bunch of other guys in ROH and in Japan. And with Kenta, yes, he had his injuries, but also he wasn't really able to wrestle his style, which maybe it's a more hard-hitting style, but it's a much more entertaining style, and maybe he's more apt to be doing that, and he knows how to carry a match and have a much, his character, how he wants to be portrayed, fits more into that more hard hitting style in Japan, and I cannot wait for this match, or for, I mean, all the matches really. And some other, so we're gonna kind of just jump forward to the first match on the show. We have Jon Moxley taking on Shota Umino, and Umino is a young lion. Their training, their training program. He comes out with the young lion Titantron on. He just comes in black boots, black trunks, nothing really to him. Moxley comes out. He does come out once again through the crowd, so that seems as though that's going to be his new gimmick, at least in New Japan. And right at the beginning, before the bell lever rang, Umino nailed Moxley with a jumping flip dive tope con hilo, or whatever you call it. I'm not Mauro Ranallo, I don't know all the different terminologies, but he hit a flip dive to the outside on Moxley. And Umino got the upper hand early, but in the end, Moxley made his comeback and wiped him out with just the regular double arm DDT for the win. And he wins at 4 minutes. Kind of, you would say maybe a squash, but nothing too shocking here. Jon Moxley's second match in New Japan Wrestling, a no-name young lion. And it was just a straightforward, Moxley's in the country, might as well have him go over strong on someone. But I think the bigger news here is what happened after the match. Obviously, Moxley jumps on the mic after the match, and this was kind of expected for this to happen because there was a notable gap in his July schedule, and he announced his intentions to be in the G1 Climax tournament. And this is super exciting. We're going to get all these big matches between Jon Moxley and all these different people. It obviously depends on what block he's in. I'm hoping he's in like a super mega block where we're going to see like him go up against Naito and Ibushi and like all these dream matches that we want to see. And as I said, Moxley might not be the in-ring guy that Kenta is or Will Osprey is, but it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be a challenge for him, but it's definitely going to see, how he stacks up against these other guys who have just been on fire and can have a great match. And I'm not going to say he's going to stink out the joint and have terrible matches with everybody, but it's going to be a nice little barometer to see what Moxley can bring in the ring. And after that, he goes up to Umino and he puts his arm around him and he helps him to the back. Just that. And it kind of defines him as a babyface. Yes, he's crazy and he's hard hitting and he's all over the place, but in the end, he is a babyface. I was expecting rather, for him to, lay him out or do something dastardly, but nope, he just takes him, walks him to the back, exactly what Tanahashi and Okada did, so kind of a nice bookending of segments where Jon Moxley helps him to the back at the end of the first match, and Tanahashi helps Okada to the back at the end of the last match. Going on the second match of the show, Shingo Takagi beats Kojima. He beats Kojima, and Shingo announced his intentions to go into the G1 Climax. And Takagi, obviously, his only loss was to Will Osprey after 97, I think, consecutive wins. Kojima, aging veteran, still can go in the ring, but I think there was no real, doubt that Takagi was not going to win this match. And with him going into the G1, it's definitely going to be a test for him. Another kind of junior moving up into the heavyweight division. It's definitely setting up to be a really good G1 Climax. We kind of say this every year, like, oh, this is the best one ever. How are they going to top it? And now we have Moxley, Shingo, Kenta, all declaring in the G1, and that doesn't even count the regular guys, where we're gonna probably see Tanahashi, Okada, Naito, Ibushi. Maybe we get one of those aging veterans in there with that last run, and they always have that one standout match where they get their one big win in the tournament. And yeah, so this G1 definitely every single week for the most part. I'm going to try to do my best to keep up with that G1 and give you guys updates. Moving on, we have some tag team matches. Not a whole lot to say here. We have Yoshihashi and Jushin Liger beating Suzuki-gun and Zack Sabre Jr. and Minoru Suzuki. Yoshihashi pinning Zack Sabre Jr., so that sets up a feud for Yoshihashi to go up against Sabre for the British Heavyweight Championship. We continue to see the feud between Liger and Suzuki. That should be a fun match. Maybe we see it at Wrestle Kingdom. Maybe we see it somewhere down the line at one of these. Maybe he wrestled at the G1. That could be the, a match we see at the G1 show in Dallas. That would be a nice little treat there for the crowd in America. Moving on, we get Taguchi, Juice Robinson, and Hiroshi Tanahashi beating the Bullet Club, which is Taiji Ishimori, Chase Owens, and Jay White, building off of the match between Jay White and Hiroshi Tanahashi from Best in Super Juniors Finals. Nothing a whole lot to say here. Tomohiro Ishii goes and defeats Taichi to become the new Never Openweight champion. Good, hard-hitting match. Story here was Ishii usually shows respect for his opponents. Showed no respect for Taichi because Taichi is just flamboyant and over the top, and Ishii don't play that game. He don't want to deal with all that BS. And he becomes a new Never Openweight champion. Basically, that is Ishii's championship. I think they said that's his 5th time winning it. And good for Ishii. And finally, we have the IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team Championship match with the Gorillas of Destiny's Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa beating LIJ members Evil and Sonata. And of course, we get GOD shenanigans here where the Evil and Sonata both have Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa in submission holds. And Jeddah, their manager, valet, whatever you want to call him. He pulls the referee out right before the guys tap out. He beats them down, and Bushi comes out to make the save. Sprays Jeddah in the face with the mist. Maybe the best misting you'll ever see. Just completely covered his entire face with black mist. Looked fantastic. But in the end, I don't exactly know what the finishing sequence was, but I believe Evil loses by Tama Tonga rolls up Evil, now that I remember, with a roll-up, grabbing the tights for a cheap heel victory. Sonata leaving the ring. I don't know if it's anything to write home about, but Sonata kind of left the ring without Evil. Sonata was visibly disappointed, so was Evil. Don't know if that's going anywhere. Maybe just the first chapter for a long story. Maybe we get an Evil Sonata feud or a breakup or something down the line. So that was the Dominion show. Definitely a really good show. Highly recommend you go check that out. You can see, maybe disappointing, I would say, but it's just these Dominion shows these last few years have just been so great that it's kind of hard to top, especially last year's and the year before with those Kenny and Okada matches, that it was bound eventually to come back down to earth, and it definitely did. One of these, our next show that we're going to talk about definitely was not as good as Dominion, and that was WWE Super Showdown, taking place from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And we talk about how they always say Jeddah, they never say Saudi Arabia in the build, but during this show, they said Saudi Arabia countless times. And I wouldn't say there was propaganda, but they definitely were putting over the country a lot more this third go around more than the second go around right after the Jamal Khashoggi controversy, with obviously him being murdered and everything. We're not going to get into that right now, but definitely it was not as much as the first time where we got the whole propaganda piece of their whole 2030 vision of equality and whatever progressiveness that is obviously a whole bunch of bullshit, because there's news that came out basically around this time of Super Showdown that the Saudi Arabia government wants to execute an 18-year-old boy, we'll say, after actions when he led a protest when he was 10, and he was arrested when he was 13. So basically a boy is going to die for his actions that he did when he was 10 years old, which, yes, we're just going to leave it at that. We're going to kind of just march through the card in order. All these matches, really nothing to write home about. They are kind of canon, I would say, especially this opening match. We get Seth Rollins taking on Baron Corbin for the WWE Universal Championship match, and Seth retains in about 11 minutes. Corbin gets into a little bit of a scuffle with the referee after Corbin was going to use a chair, and Seth rolled up Corbin for the win, so not exactly putting Seth over strong here. But as we're going to get into this, Super Showdown was basically the prequel to Stomping Grounds, where a lot of these matches are going to be rematched on Stomping Grounds, where I assume the matches are going to be a lot better because they're going to be on a normal travel schedule, indoors, not in 100-degree weather at 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, late at night, like some of these matches were. And a really weak match between these two guys, maybe one of the worst televised Universal Championship matches ever. And I know it's a short history with that championship, but that is saying a lot for this match. So after the fact, Corbin gave Seth an end of days, and Brock Lesnar and Heyman walk out on to the ring with the Money in the Bank briefcase in hand. Heyman accidentally, on purpose, trips through the ropes and he drops the Money in the Bank briefcase. And Lesnar was briefly distracted when he was gonna hit Seth with a chair, but instead Seth, the babyface that he is, takes Brock Lesnar to Dick Kick City once again. And Lesnar dropped the chair. Seth Rollins grabs it and just wallops on him, just one after another after another. So the babyface, the only way for him to conquer the beast is to kick him in the nuts. Great storytelling here from WWE. No, Brock Lesnar didn't cash it in. Didn't even really tease a cash in. Obviously it was a tease, but he wasn't like gonna hand the briefcase over to the referee before it happened. And just continuing the storyline of Brock Lesnar was like 3-4 weeks in a row of him teasing a cash in and it doesn't happen. It is in the rule book that he can do whatever the hell he wants, but it's just not good. I don't think it's good. It's not good on the company to keep saying they're going to deliver on this thing, but then never actually deliver on these cash-ins. And another easy payday for Brock Lesnar. This kind of adds to the meta heat that he gets if he just kind of shows up, does very minimal, and he gets paid a lot of money for this. As I maybe said, the logical thing is for Brock Lesnar to cash in on Kofi Kingston. Obviously, that did not happen, and I think we're just going to continue on. My thinking, if I were to put a bet on this, I would say, what I would personally do is I think Brock is going to hold on to that thing until the Fox deal kicks in, to where maybe that first week of SmackDown, where Brock Lesnar cashes in on Kofi Kingston, maybe in advance, to draw a big rating in. Maybe after several weeks of Brock, even more of this, where he's going to continue to maybe cash in, but then he doesn't, to where maybe, I know it's not, we've never seen this before, and it really doesn't make any sense for the McMahons to demand Brock Lesnar to do something. Obviously, it doesn't look good for Brock to be hearing to what the McMahons say, because Brock's a badass, and wrestlers in general are badasses, should be badasses, but everyone has to cower to the McMahons. In the end, we go, and the next match is Demon Finn Balor going up against Andrade for the Intercontinental Championship, and this match was maybe the best match of the show in a 12-minute retention for Finn Balor. I say it was the best match of the show, but that's not saying a lot. Definitely none of these matches went past 3 stars. Maybe none of them went past 2.5 stars. Just kind of going through the motions. A house show style match. As I said, 100-degree weather. You can definitely see it on Finn Balor with the face paint. He basically, by the time he got to the ring, his face paint and his chest paint was already kind of coming off just from all the sweat and perspiration from that. Just pretty straightforward match. Something you probably could have seen a better match on SmackDown that they've had, or Raw, or whatever. And this might set up a match down the line, but I think this is kind of a nice, and maybe not a nice ending, but I think Finn's going to move on to maybe some bigger and better things, maybe against Randy Orton, who got a nice win on the show. And maybe the most perplexing and just utterly the stupidest thing I might have ever seen on WWE television was this match, and Shane McMahon beats Roman Reigns, yes, the Roman Reigns, in about 9 minutes. And I believe, as I've been told from my sources, that this is the first time since Roman Reigns relinquished the championship and left after getting cancer, or even came back from his leave of absence, his first time ever since coming back that he's been pinned. and it was to Shane McMahon in Saudi Arabia in this crappy, crappy match. And Shane got so much offense in on Roman Reigns. And yes, Drew McIntyre interfered occasionally, but not nearly enough to justify how much selling Roman had to do for this. I know I bury Roman all the time on the Bulletcast. I put over Shane, with the wink and a smile. But I don't understand why you have literally your top dog in the company losing and have to sell so much for a late 40s, you know, wannabe wrestler, daddy's boy, Shane McMahon. It just makes no sense. And unfortunately, we're gonna have to deal with I think this Shane Miz or this Shane Roman feud more, and this also just kind of hurts Drew McIntyre, kind of by butterfly effect by Drew's gonna have to sell. I feel like Drew's gonna sell a lot more for Roman than Shane McMahon's going to, and Roman beat Drew clean in like a 10-minute match at WrestleMania, and yet Roman can't deal with Shane McMahon. But he is the best in the world. It is his home court advantage because he is in Saudi Arabia. So what can he do? Lucha House Party goes up against Lars Sullivan, and Sullivan doesn't win by pinfall, doesn't win or doesn't get disqualified for attacking the Lucha House Party so much. But no, he wins via disqualification because the Lucha House Party don't understand the rules and they got out of control and they were all just attacking Lars at the same time and that disqualified them. But then in the end, Lars ends up laying them all out at the end of the match. And I don't know who this helps. I mean, Lars didn't win. He won by technicality, but then the Lucha House Party wasn't protected because in the end they just got destroyed anyways, and it was just didn't do anything for anybody in this match. Once again, nothing to this match. Randy Orton and Triple H, surprisingly not the semi-main event, and Orton wins due to my. I predicted Triple H was going to win just because Triple H tends to do these things. Randy Orton doesn't care, get a paycheck, but it is the right thing to do to have the legend who barely wrestles put over the guy who is on television at least more regularly than he is. And Orton wins in about 26 minutes. I thought the second half of this match was actually pretty decent. Some hard hitting, legend action with a lot of recognizable spots here. But 26 minutes, cut out 10 of it. Go 12 to 15 minutes. Do the greatest hits. You don't need 3 minutes in between every big spot for rest holds and just selling and so methodical. And this is a Triple H Randy Orton specialty here. I know it's hot. Just get your shit in and get out. But of course that wasn't going to happen. And yeah, I mean, maybe surprisingly good, I would say, at the very end, but it was just I didn't expect a whole lot from these guys. So yeah, that was that. We go on for Bobby Lashley going up against Braun Strowman, and Strowman wins in about 8 minutes. I thought this was a pretty good power, big guy versus big guy match. Just guys just kind of doing their big move. Well, not doing their, it wasn't like a spot fest or anything like that, but just kind of going back and forth. Some strongman holds and everything like that. Good work, especially for these guys, big dudes in 100-degree weather. Hats off to them. But once again, nothing really to write home about. Kofi Kingston beats Dolph Ziggler in about 10 minutes to retain the WWE Championship. And I had thoughts maybe this could be the best match of the show. Not really. I mean, it was just kind of utterly decent. It was just there. It was fine. Nothing offensive to it, but it just isn't going to do anything. It's not going to blow your socks off. It's nothing you haven't seen before on a Kofi Kingston SmackDown match, or even, a non-title or a Kofi Kingston match from 12 years ago. It was nothing spectacular to it. But the story in this match made absolutely no sense, to where Kofi Kingston won by basically interference from Xavier Woods. Kofi gets dumped to the outside, and Xavier's tending to his boy, and Ziggler hits Woods with a super kick. They go back into the ring, Kofi that is, and Ziggler goes to hit the ropes, and Woods hits Ziggler in the back with the kick, and that stuns him for a bit, and Kingston hits Ziggler with the Trouble in Paradise for the tainted win. So you have your babyface winning via cheating, albeit he didn't know this, but he wins via cheating. And then we go backstage to a promo with him and Byron Saxton, and the heel, who just lost via cheating, demands a cage match against the babyface because he needs the odds to be in his because he needs the odds to be one-on-one. That should never happen. The rule should always be reversed. It should be to where it is the babyface who is getting cheated by the heels. Where, when Drew McIntyre was with Dolph Ziggler, it could have been like that. But no, it's for some reason it's flipped around to where Kofi Kingston is getting interference from Xavier Woods. But that's just the state of WWE creative at this point. And we go on to the 50-man Battle Royal, which apparently was not even really a 50-man Battle Royal. There was a lone mystery person in there that was supposed to be there, because I guess there was 51 people in that match. And in the end, Mansoor, who I've talked about a few times on this show during the NXT recap, ends up winning the 50-man Battle Royal. It was a Battle Royal, so all 50 people, or 51 men, were put in the ring, and it was just kind of comical, just especially like right after the bell rings, like you see EC3 just getting dumped out. Maybe he pulled the Gail Kim and just jumped over the top rope because he was like, "Fuck this shit, I'm out." And who could blame him? And rapid fire eliminations. Everyone's just trying to get out of there and get their payday. And in the end, Mansoor, who is a Saudi Arabian native, gets the victory. And honestly, this was probably the highlight of the show. Just seeing the crowd genuinely getting excited for the hometown boy, or home country boy, getting the victory. And he wins. And honestly, he has had the most to gain from this, because if, I don't know, Bobby Lashley or some undercard, or some heel were to win this, if Elias were to win, who was the last person to get eliminated by Mansoor, if Elias were to win, it wouldn't really do him a whole lot. Yes, he might have some bragging rights for a few weeks, but does it really propel him or elevate him in any ways? I don't think it does. I think, at least for Mansoor, he has a memorable moment. It's a nice moment for the crowd, for him. And with him being so young in his NXT career, hasn't really had anything too substantive yet, this can be a nice jumping off point for his career. And I assume he's going to be on NXT in the next month or two, and we're going to get maybe a push for old Mansoor. And finally, the match you've all been waiting for, Goldberg versus Undertaker. I'll be honest, they had me for a little bit. They had a really good video package to start the match. Then we get to Goldberg, who comes out already bleeding because apparently he pulled the Goldberg and headbutted something to get him pumped up. So he might have got a concussion there. He walks out to the ring. Ring entrance was great. Undertaker comes out, has caskets all over the place. I know that's the Undertaker's gimmick, but maybe a little too symbolic for Saudi Arabia. Undertaker comes out, the entrances, the hype, the video package beforehand, all was fantastic. And I was like, okay, we go in there, do a 5-minute match, just hit the big moves and get out of there. Don't be too over the top. Don't try to steal the show or anything. And then the bell rang. Goldberg hits a sloppy looking spear, and we're off to the races. We get a spear, a kick out. And then we get like a Goldberg knee bar. And if you want to hear Matt Riddle's commentary on the knee bar, you can go to his Twitter, Instagram, and he commentates on how great that knee bar looked, bro. And we get I can't really remember what all happened in order, but Goldberg gets dropped on his head, I think. So he gets dropped on his head from a tombstone that was way too low. Goldberg rams himself into the ring post and busts himself open hard way, and just blood gushing everywhere. He tries to lift up Undertaker for a jackhammer. Basically looks like a brainbuster, and he basically did give him a brainbuster because he dropped Undertaker on his head. Not the best move sequence. They try to do the old tombstone into tombstone spot, where Goldberg was going to give Undertaker a tombstone, but then Undertaker was supposed to flip out of it. Reminiscent of the WrestleMania 33 spot with Roman Reigns, where that spot got blown and they had to call that off. I don't know why Undertaker keeps trying to go to that well if he can't do it. And we, Undertaker, obviously that was supposed to be the finish. Undertaker calls an audible, and he hits a choke slam, a shitty looking choke slam on Goldberg for the victory. And they go to Undertaker's face. I assume you guys have all seen it. And he is visibly pissed, either at himself, at Goldberg, at the entire situation. Who knows? But, yeah, that was a scary match to watch. I mean, it was almost kind of like the Ibushi match where it took me out of the moment. It was definitely that brainbuster that really got me going. I was like, ooh, that didn't look good. That was terrible. And it just made me feel for the men in the match. It was scary. It was just, I felt for their health. I couldn't enjoy it. I mean, even if nobody fell on their head, this was not a good match. I don't think anybody could enjoy it. And hopefully, this is an eye opener not only to Undertaker but WWE in general, to where they shouldn't have these matches. They shouldn't have these Legends matches. I mean, you can. I don't know if this was if they rehearsed this match beforehand, but even if you wrestle in a hot Dallas gym with all the doors closed, turn the AC off, it's not going to prepare you to wrestle in 100-degree weather in Jeddah with the travel, the jet lag, at 1 o'clock in the morning. Just all those different variables add up. Plus, you have two 50-year-old guys who Goldberg was never a workhorse. Undertaker, yes, he had great matches, but he's not Shawn Michaels. He's not gonna go out there and create movement and carry Goldberg like that. But I'm hoping this. I don't think this is gonna be Undertaker's last match, just because I don't think he wants that to be his last match. Or I think it'd be better if he just has like kind of that John Cena match to where he goes and does the greatest hits and leaves. This is what this match should have been. Should have been really short. Do nothing. Don't do anything too crazy. Go in there, hit a tombstone. But obviously, we saw in the match they couldn't pull that off, and I hate to laugh because it's scary, because you don't want to see these legends who you loved growing up, and you see them coming back for a payday, and they're putting their bodies at risk. And Goldberg was never the greatest wrestler in the world, but Goldberg still has a legend to upkeep, and he has to look a certain way, and maybe because he has to look a certain way, that negatively affects him in the ring even more. I mean, Batista was a super muscle guy. He got older. He comes back. He slimmed down. Still looks great, but just looks different. But he was able to kind of perform in the ring. Nothing. I mean, he wasn't. I don't think he was putting Triple H or Randy Orton, Daniel Bryan, any of those people in jeopardy when he came back to wrestle. And hopefully, it's the end of stuff like this. But let's be honest, it probably wasn't. And that was Super Showdown, a utterly forgettable, terrible show. Honestly, I kind of regret watching it, but I didn't really have anything else to do. I didn't watch everything like minute for minute, but I got the gist of it. And yeah, the Goldberg Undertaker match was rough, you guys. So we've gone pretty long here. We have the NXT TV report, the post show, the dark matches on NXT Takeover. Nothing really to write home about. There was actually kind of a fair, not that many promos, no, a lot of video recaps, but nothing, too monumental on the show, so we can get through this pretty quickly. Keith Lee defeats Kona Reeves in about 6 minutes. Good match. Kona actually got a decent amount of offense in on Keith Lee compared to some of his other matches. And for Keith Lee to put Kona Reeves away in 6 minutes and having to sell so much for him, I don't know if that hurts Keith Lee a lot, or if that means they're trying to elevate Kona Reeves, but not the best of looks for Keith Lee to take so long to beat basically the lowest person on the totem pole who gets any significant amount of TV time. But we're at the so I'm gonna hold out hope that maybe they're gonna try to build up Kiona and build up Lee to where this doesn't hurt Lee as much. But if Kona keeps jobbing out to everybody in a couple minutes, but yet it took Keith Lee to beat him in 6. Not the best of looks for him. Keith Lee maybe still off to a rocky start in his NXT career. We get the post-match, or they get the video package on the women's match, the NXT women's match, and we get a post-match interview with Io Shirai. She says that she still has business to take care of with Baszler, and next week, Io Shirai and Candice LeRae is going to face Jessamine Duke and Marina Shafir. Mia Yim and Bianca Belair advertised match is next. and we get a recap of the NXT Tag Team Championship match. We go to the post match with the Street Profits. They go and they talk to the camera crew. The NXT camera person, they kind of call him out and say that he's been there since day one. So then someone else takes the camera and they get him to get on screen, and they kind of mess around with him a little bit. He had a Matt Riddle shirt on, and they were joking, saying they got to go get him a Street Profits shirt. So then they leave. Good. I thought it was just a good, simple promo from the Street Profits. I mean, it's kind of nothing really too substantive, but it was just kind of nice to see them in that environment at the right after the match, fresh off their win, and just having that emotion. And yeah, it was also kind of fun to just have them kind of not remember the little guy, but kind of honor it. I assume that was a shoot to where that camera guy was really there with them since day one. So that's kind of a nice little moment for them. We get a video package of the Velveteen Dream beating Tyler Breeze in the NXT North American Championship match. An interview asked Breeze what's next. His ear is covered in dried blood, and Breeze puts Dream over and says that he thinks Dream now respects him, and he says, "I am not back in NXT," then reiterates it. So that's that. We get another Damian Priest vignette. And I don't know if I really said this, but it does kind of look like a combination of Aleister Black and Baron Corbin of sorts. And we get our pseudo main event of the show with Mia Yim taking on Bianca Belair on the NXT show before Takeover. Mia Yim ends up beating Bianca Belair to even up this tied at 1-1 after Bianca Belair beat her that first time with her hair on the ropes and used it for leverage for the roll-up. But in the rubber match, Mia Yim ends up winning in 10 minutes and 30 seconds, much better than their last match pre-takeover. And I really enjoyed this match. I thought it was good. I don't know if I'd say it was takeover worthy compared to all the other matches on the takeover show a few weeks ago, but it definitely was a good showing by both these women. Maybe kind of more reminiscent of the early takeover shows where there was a lot of matches on the card at once, and it had TV build to it, but it just didn't really have the heat that other matches on the takeover show had. Much respect to the women. Had a really good match. Maybe eye-opening that Mia Yim won kind of this feud between her and Bianca Belair, so maybe Mia Yim is next in line for a title opportunity. Maybe Shafir or Baszler defeats Io Shirai in a hardcore match or whatever they're going to do at the next takeover TV taping, and Yim is that next person in line to take on Baszler. And the finale was not the match. We go to a interview with Drew Gulak after he lost to Kushida. And Gulak insists that he is the best submission person in the world. And with Kushida beating him via pinfall, he took the coward's way out. And he challenged Kushida to a submission match next week. And Kushida accepted via Twitter. And William Regal signed the match. So next week we are going to be getting that match, as well as we're going to get a submission match between Kushida and Drew Gulak. And they also announced that Bobby Fish was injured in their match at TakeOver, and they booked Kyle O'Reilly and Roderick Strong to face Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch in tag team competition next week, which is this week. And then finally, we go to a recap of the NXT Championship match. That was it, just a straightforward recap, no after-match promo from the Undisputed Era. And we close the show basically the exact same way they closed the show at TakeOver, with the Undisputed Era posing in the middle of the ring and Adam Cole hoisting that NXT Championship above his head. And that'll do it for me for today. Thank y'all very much. A marathon episode of Under the Radar. A lot of things to talk about, a lot of good wrestling, a lot of meh wrestling, and some wrestling in the middle. Thank y'all very much for listening. This was, I think, the first time ever I've actually done a Under the Radar show on a Monday. I'm not exactly sure. Apparently it's been a year since I've done this. Not a full 52-week run. As you've seen, we're only on episode 40-something. I'm not going to say it because I know I'm going to get it wrong if I try. But, yeah, it's been a good run. Maybe this is the longest episode I've done to date. But, yeah, we are doing the Bulletcast on Wednesday, so make sure to check that out. Gonna go, I need to make sure, I need to go to the mailbag, the UTR mailbag at gmail.com. If you didn't know, if you got a question, send it over my way. If you have any NXT questions in particular, I'd really much appreciate that, since we never really talk about NXT television on the Bullet Cast. And loading the mailbox up eventually. I'm doing some updating on the PlayStation, so it's taking up some bandwidth. But of course, the mailbag is empty, so I don't feel bad. Not. I almost didn't check it, but it's okay. And that'll do it for me for today. Listen to the Bulletcast. We did one last week. We're going to do one on Wednesday. Follow us on all the majors of social media, Instagram and Twitter at the Bulletcast. The Bulletcast, I believe, is on both Instagram and the Twitter. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter, Brandon Tanguma _. That is BRANDON TANGUMA _. Thank you all very much for listening. I know I've said it like 20 times already, but I do sincerely appreciate all you listeners out there. And until next time, goodbye and good night. Bye.